Today more than ever, I feel particularly proud to introduce myself as a novelist, particularly someone who's worked on a non-magical, mytho-historical interpretation of the Mahabharata, a reconstruction rather than an interpretation. Now, I'm hoping that when we get into the discussion, we can actually talk about what's the difference between fiction and history and mytho-history. But before that, I should really, okay, I must confess, I'm feeling extremely excited and that's why I'm not making sense. And the reason why I'm feeling extremely excited is because I'm sharing the stage with someone I've always considered a legend, particularly as I've read stories related to the Mahabharata. And, you know, we talk now of how mytho-fiction has exploded, but I think Dr. Rai wrote Yajnaseeni in 1983 or 84, was it not? So, yeah, this slew of literature is not something new, ये काफी दिनों से रहा है, and so we exchanged emails on how this would go, and we have two options. One is that maybe I'll just let Dr. Rai talk about her book for a minute, and then we'll get into some question and answers, and as part of that process, I'll also, well, I'm waiting to ask her a lot of questions, so, and I know you are too. So, would you like to?
The theme is reinventing Mahabharata. I think impossible. Nobody can reinvent Mahabharata. Even if it is recreating Mahabharata, that is also impossible. Nobody can recreate Mahabharata. I have not recreated Mahabharata. I have visited and revisited Mahabharata again and again. We people are visiting, revisiting our myths because that is our root. All the writers, they revisit their roots, and we are deeply rooted in our soil. I'll tell you about the use of myth. Why the Indian writers are using myths always. We cannot be free from our myths. Even if a writer doesn't write a novel like this or Krishna or something else, even M.T. Vasudevan Nair also has written. Many big shots, they have written novels on Mahabharata characters and Ramayana characters. Even if a writer doesn't write a book on a Mahabharata character, we are using Mahabharata characters as symbols and metaphors or imagery. Suppose when you say Yudhishthir, it gives a different image, like Ram, like Ravana. They are all symbolic. We are using them as symbolic. So, the use of myth and archetypes in Indian literature is an endeavor for returning to the roots of human existence and finding solace for predicament of modern man through certain eternal values and spiritual essence. Poets and writers are therefore consciously and unconsciously trying to superimpose themselves in mythical characters, and even without their knowing, they are becoming those characters. Without their knowing, they are becoming those characters when they are writing the characters. Levi-Strauss rightly say Levi-Strauss is a scholar of myth. He says that therefore he claims to show that not how men think in myths, but how myths operate in men's mind without their being aware of it. Why we are returning to myth? In ultimate analysis, we may find that myth has been used as a catalytic agent, inspiring the inherent creative energies to wield something new, yet rooted in mythical soil, not destroying or damaging the fabric of eternal values. We have no right to distort the characters. Myth has the innate potentiality to enable a sensitive and sensible writer to rediscover the much needed inherent self. Therefore, ultimately we see transfer transformation and transcendence of mythical characters. Three things we do, writers do. Transfer of myths, transformation of myth, and transcendence of mythical characters in literature, keeping itself out of myth but not away from myth. Possibly, this is because myth is infinitely elastic, innately accommodative, but do not yield to any distortion. Hence, modern writers cannot even recreate myth. They only create new myths of their time out of the primordial myths. So, this is why we are revisiting Mahabharata. I can read, this is my book, I wrote it 30 years back. And I'm really tired of facing interview on this book. After this book, I have written 14 novels. Because I am writing in Bhasa, in my Bhasa. Nowadays, regional is not allowed to say regional literature. Because no literature is regional. Language may be regional, literature is always universal. Therefore, I wrote in Bhasa literature. I just read something. Sitakant Mahapatra, the Gyanpith Award winner, writer, he has written 2 lines about this book. Pratibha Rai makes a determined effort for a portrayal of the epic character and brings to the surface the broader and deeper aspects of Draupadi's mind that lay submerged in the majestic sweep of the great Mahabharata. Draupadi here in this novel is not only a remaining anchor to the epic, but also rise out of the pages of Mahabharata to become our contemporary and essentially relevant to our. So we are reinterpreting the characters, and that should be relevant to our time. And any question?
Actually, you must forgive me for this, because the first thing I think I'm going to do is disagree with you when you say that myths cannot be recreated, reconstructed. And if the audience will allow me to very briefly explain why I make this statement before I ask Dr. Rai to answer it. The reason being that myth, we know, comes from what once was history, probably very obscure history that we don't have much record of. But the point is, it does at its base have some historical basis. And history, I think many of us would agree, is written by winners. It is subject to reinterpretation, it is used to legitimize systems and structures and the way of life that has been. So when that happens, obviously the myth has already undergone transformation. So what we have today, when we say the Mahabharata, first of all, I'm not even sure whether, my question would be, which Mahabharata? Because you go to Indonesia and you read their Bharatayuddha, they're telling you a completely different story where Shikhandin was always a woman, never a eunuch, never a woman transformed into a man. And yes, they will also tell you that Bhishma was married. So, my first question is going to be, which Mahabharata are we even talking about? So, having said which, if we today want to construct interpretations that take out the magic, take out the divinity, and instead of putting in anachronistic scientific explanations like, oh yes, there were flying saucers and now we've lost the technology, if we talk about what happened as a story of revolution, of social change, a story of people, why is that not reconstruction? Why do we want to feel that myth is untouchable, infallible, and the only thing we can do is retell the story again and again?
Writers are free to do. Draupadi in Mahabharata character, you are asking which Mahabharata? It is our past, it is our root. It is our root.
There are so many variations of that root. Which variation are we looking at?
Not at all. When we utter Mahabharata, it is Vyasa's Mahabharata, the original Mahabharata. After that, so many stories are been written.
So the original 800, the 8,000 or the 120,000 verses that are there today, because Vyasa himself says, as part of the prefix of the critical edition, that he did not all the 1,100.
Vyasa means who compose. Vyasa is not one person. Vyasa means who composes. So that is the meaning. So one person cannot do that. Oh, the record is not there. So
In which case it would have changed, right? As every
would
person
have
added.
the different verses, like Uttar Ramayana, like Uttar Ramayana, it is different. Totally, people say that it is not written by Valmiki. So we don't know. It may be written by many people. But after that, when we say Mahabharata, that is that Vyasas, all the Vyasas, those were written. That is the great classic. That is the epic. That is the great classic, which we cannot escape at all Indians. So I tell you, Draupadi. Draupadi is a character, the enigmatic heroine of Mahabharata, is really very much misunderstood. People say that she was the warmonger. So this novel, I am misunderstood because I am a woman in physics. They think that I wrote it from feministic point of view. I wrote about only the pain and suffering and torture of women. Not at all. It is, I have written about the pain and suffering of the humanity. I read the last some paragraphs. You can understand. Please just listening. This novel is a letter. This novel is a letter to Krishna. I have created a relationship between Krishna and Krishna. Draupadi's name is Krishna. Actually, the name is Yagyaseni, the daughter of Yagyasena, and also she was born out of Yagya. So that name is very powerful, having force, Yagyaseni. So I could have given Draupadi or Krishna or any other name of Draupadi, but I chose this name. So this is a letter to Krishna when Draupadi is falling in the Himalayas and all the husbands are leaving and going to Swarga. At that time, she is writing a letter on the stone of the Himalaya and the blood oozing from her heart. So this novel starts from the end. When the Draupadi is ending the letter, we write iti. I don't know. In Odia, we write iti. Iti, tomorrow, priya, sakhi. Iti, yours, dear friend. Sakhi, sakha, bhava. That I have created between Draupadi and Krishna, which is misunderstood by, as Krishna said to me, that it is a relationship. When we say relationship, we come out to this age of relationship. I have relationship. That is not that. It is unconditional love. It is a spiritual love. Can't there be friendship between a man and woman without any condition, without physicality? I asked myself. I got an affirmative answer. Then I established the relationship between Krishna and Krishna. That is Priya, Sakha and Sakhi. So this novel starts from the end. Iti, tomorrow, Priya, Sakhi. Again, after ending the letter, she is reading the letter, and when reading the letter, this is the novel. She is reading the novel, and the end I will read. At the end, Draupadi asks, prayed for 5 things to Krishna. 5 things. She is the wife of 5 husbands, and her name is Panchali. And she asked for 5 things to Lord Krishna. What she is asking? I am not reading all the 5. I will read one prayer. She is. This is a part of the letter. Whose is this sweet flute? It is cleansing this bleeding interior, making a stream of feelings flow. Someone is humming in my ears. Life is not for enjoyment, for feelings. Who is showing me the path, drawing me away from a life of pleasure to a life of feelings, calling me, come, come, I am waiting for you. Who is this invisible companion? Is it Maya? Maya is a new character. I have created many new characters in novel and new episodes which is not in Mahabharata, because I am not rewriting Mahabharata. Why should I write in Mahabharata when the great epic is there? So it is not Mahabharata. It is my version of a story of Draupadi or maybe Karna, Krishna. I have reinterpreted their characters. So the fourth thing I ask, three things I am not reading, it will take a long time. The fourth thing I ask is for this work, for the coming dynasties of this Kali Yuga. O Krishna, supreme worker of welfare, I have seen war. Even now, the mother's heart in me hears the lamentation of Mother Earth. Therefore, I request that because of race, religion, language, and color, let no country split into parts like Hastina and Indraprastha. Inequality is the variety of your creation. Let not the integrity, unity, and purity of any country be destroyed because of this. I have suffered the consequence of the great war. Both sides fighting in a war suffer losses. Both the victor and the vanquished lose their friends and relations. Civilization, culture, wealth, life all vanish.
While Dr. Rai is looking for pages, please do think of questions you might want to ask her. Or Dr. Rai, we move to questions.
I want to show you that this novel is for not for war and peace. It is for love and peace. Why war and then peace? I question. Tolstoy has written a great novel that is War and Peace. I question. Why first war and then peace? Let it be love and peace. So this is Draupadi is asking to Krishna, you play the flute, Om Shanti, 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 in the year of the war number of the Kali Yuga, the powerful. She writes that science here. From Lord Vyasa, I have heard that 5,000 years from now, man will reach the pinnacle of achievement of civilization, culture and science. With the help of science, he will establish contact with the planets and stars. Then, if because of a wrong decision, power-hungry persons launch a great war, what a terrible situation will arise on account of the weapons created by that very science. O Savior in distress, Krishna, on the destruction of this world, it is you who will labor for a new creation and a civilization. O Creator, therefore, as you went to Hastina in Dwapara for establishing peace, similarly, for giving warning in advance, why do you not whisper into the ears of the thoughtful people of Kali Yuga in the honeyed tone of your flute, Shanti, 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 Shanti? This is the essence of my novel.
So, in your interpretation, there is no doubt that Krishna is God. You do project Krishna as divine. You do say that he is God.
Not God. He is a person with spirituality, with valor, with a compassionate heart, who helps in distress, who is in distress, not God.
But then he does have magical powers, because in the like when the Vastraharan takes place, that he does.
Don't misunderstand Vastraharan. That is not magical power. That is surrender means when Draupadi becomes a nearly. What is in this body? Nothing. You want to see my body? See. So she surrenders. then only she got the power. That is not magical by Krishna.
Okay. Okay. Do we have any questions from the audience? Because I know I have lots of questions and I could go on and on, but
what about your take on this now?
okay. Okay, I think it would be kind of clear by now that I probably have a very tangentially different take on these events. And the reason for that is basically the premise I start off with is that there is no magic. Spirituality is a completely different thing. Spirituality is a state of mind. It has nothing to do with physical manifestations. So that apart, there is no magic, no divinity, no supernatural forces, howsoever we want to define them. Now the problem is when you have something like the Mahabharata and you take away these explanations, that leaves a huge void that you still need to fill. And my position is to fill that with ideas of social evolution. So I try and look at the epic as a story of social change, a situation where we actually, and history bears this out, that, you know, right after the period we typically ascribe to the Mahabharata is when you had the formation of Janapadas, the first semi-democratic states, not democratic in the way we know it today. But the idea that we don't need to have a feudal system, we don't need to have a divinely appointed hierarchy. So all these political thoughts are coming through at that point of time. And so what I try and do is tell the story. I mean, yes, of course, it has imagination, it has some snappy dialogues, it has action scenes, and it has philosophy. But what it really is a political story of how it's historical. That's where I guess you know, if I could be so bold, I'd characterize Dr. Rai's work as mytho-fictional, whereas I would aspire to call my work mytho-historical, because there is no creative leap that can just be taken. Everything that goes into the book has to be justified either on the basis of research or logic or what we know today about society and politics and anthropology.
Last time I answer to you by this. Why I wrote Yagyaseni? Why? Who inspired me? Actually, I was inspired from the village opera. When I was a small girl, I was watching the opera and I saw the Vastraharan, that court scene. And I was angry and I was agitated. That is one thing. And the other thing why I wrote Yagyaseni, I have written in this book, I am not going to repeat it. And why I read. My Yagyaseni is not merely a manifestation of a woman's mind struggling against the problems of humanhood. My Yagyaseni is modern mind who speaks for human race of the whole world. She comes out of the narrow boundary of woman, a iron lady, queen of any such division, based on age, sex, class or caste, and raises her voice for human cause and moreover for world peace. The readers may not find Vyasa or Sarladas. Sarladas is the epic writer, epic Mahabharata writer of our Odia. Sarladas in this character of the novel, and that was my purpose also. My purpose was also to make it different from those characters. The character is not 1,000 years old only, it is older than that day, and younger than the young mind of the present day. She enjoys a timeless longevity in my novel. Yagyaseni is not merely a synonym of Draupadi, it has been a symbolic connotation of one who is born of Yagyasena, another name of King Draupada, and at the same time born out of the fire, and has been dauntless throughout even though living in the most adverse circumstances. Is it not true for a woman in all ages, in all societies? Today, Draupadis are still being humiliated and sexually assaulted in broad daylight. Ekalavas are being deprived of their human rights in the name of caste, creed and religion. Young talents, Abhimanyus, are being killed for the self-interest of powerful Dhritarashtra's, are still blinded for the interest of the near and dear ones, and they do not hesitate to devastate the motherland for power, greed and position. Gandharis are still forced to be blinded in the name of devotion to husband or pratha, the custom. Corners are being denied justice, having no royal identity. Every day, everywhere in this world, Kurukshetra war is going on inside and outside human existence. Hence, what could my Draupadi have done except becoming a revolt and rebellion against all the injustices and inhumanity? What else could I have written except Yajnaseni when I wrote it?
Thank you very much. And on that note, I think we will end this session. Thank you very much for being with us.